Bold decisions are not impulsive, especially when the stakes are this high. They are actually really, really thoughtful, not impulsive, but well researched, and really takes into consideration stakeholders and draws from the networks that they already have to say, okay, if we were to implement this bold decision, how would we do it? Who would benefit?
Welcome to Radical Cooperation. I'm Dr. Michael Horowitz, Chancellor of the Community Solution Education System. Higher education is facing a transformative moment. Enrollment declines, shifting accreditation demands, and the urgent need to align learning with an evolving workforce. These challenges require not just resilience, but bold leadership willing to rethink how institutions serve both students and society. And today's guest is someone who exemplifies that kind of leadership. Joining us is Dr. Nadege Dady, Dean of Student Affairs and Clinical Associate Professor at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine, Harlem Campus. She leads efforts that shape the student experience from admissions and student life to alumni engagement, and is known for advancing pathway programs like MedAchieve and the New York State Area Health Education Center, which expand access to medical careers. Dr. Dady, welcome to Radical Cooperation.
Thank you, Dr. Horowitz. I am so happy to be joining you and joining in this conversation. Very timely. Thank you.
Well, welcome again. And I'd love to start with you sharing a bit about your professional journey, your personal background, and how it has shaped your approach to leadership and decision-making in higher education.
Well, thank you. My professional journey, like most people, exposed me to a range of experiences, which I'm very thankful for. But I really started out early on in the nonprofit healthcare sector, where I was hired immediately as an administrator. But I got very quickly pulled into lots of other things like teaching, counseling. Before you knew it, I was running meetings and running grants. But what was important about that was that the learning environment was such that I soaked up everything around me, every opportunity to learn. I just jumped right in. But the most important part of that early experience was that I learned a bit about the background issues that were impacting healthcare. So, under the umbrella of health disparities, I started to really understand some of the impactful issues around doctor patient trust, the lack thereof, what keeps patients from going to the doctor or listening to the doctor. Health illiteracy, which involves when the physician might assume that the patient understands what they're saying, but the patient has no clue what the doctor means or what the medications mean, and could eventually have disastrous results for both groups. And then exposed to these educational pathways. So what was exciting about the educational pathways was that I learned that there were both private and public entities who were willing to fund these educational pathways as a proposed solution to remedy things like health disparities. So that was a really great learning opportunity. And I got to really spread my wings and learn from physicians and social workers and other teachers. It was an eye opener. And then I progressed into academia. And academia, for a bit of a different takeaway, I really learned about the corporate structure of higher ed, which is, how is higher ed funded? How are people like yourself, chancellors, presidents, what are the things that you worry about? What are the things that lead your leadership? Things like accreditation, things like resources and funding, and all the things that make higher education important for students and administrators alike. And then the exposure within higher ed to other educational pathways took a different turn, because then I got to understand, well, if you're going to have this bold, creative idea around an educational pathway, who's going to resource it? Who's going to teach in that pathway? And so there were other sort of learning opportunities there. Um, but I enjoyed all of it. I opened myself to learn as much as I could, and I just kept taking notes, refining my notes, and really all of those experiences have shaped my leadership style, and the things that I bring to the table when I'm working with either students or my dean or the president.
I love what you're describing in terms of bringing in insights from outside higher education. I received my own PhD within a medical school, and I learned so much in the same way, I think, just from observing patient doctor interactions. What were the dynamics within the healthcare setting, even though that was never part of the explicit curriculum? So important, because often we get siloed within higher education and we're not reacting enough to the outside world. I'm taking away from what you've described that you've figured out how to get more students who might not have seen themselves entering becoming a physician or another health profession in.
Yes, that was it. It was so the early years I was figuring out, well, how can I be helpful here? And one of the main goals of the area health education centers, which, I was once leading the New York City one, was to increase exposure to allied health fields. Simply because there was a certain point, and someone argued that there's still that issue that not enough students were being exposed to STEM fields. What the research was showing is they would start out very early and then leave for a variety of different reasons. So the area health education center's mission at that time was really to get more students exposed to allied health fields and allied health mentors.
Fantastic. It from time to time we talk about trying to shift to being student ready colleges or universities, whereas the old saw used to be about the student needing to be college ready. And perhaps both are true, yet it seems like higher ed can do a lot more to shape success.
There are a great deal of opportunities for higher ed, but we higher education, especially as I learned about the corporate side of higher ed, that prevents some of the creativity that can happen with other solutions that can come to play. But higher education is so vast and broad. There are a great deal of opportunities to really redefine that and collaboratively find solutions. That's my perception.
Yeah, I like that. So, in a sense, uh, you've taken on bold initiatives or bold decisions in the face of what is a more structured, or as you're saying, corporate approach, which is part of the requirement as well. I've had the pleasure of knowing Touro University for the better part of 2 decades. I actually got to visit when your founder, Dr. Lander, was president, and now have gotten to know his successor, Dr. Kadish. It strikes me that the institution in general is oriented toward bold decision making. How do you personally define a bold decision in the context of higher ed?
Right. So I was reflecting on this, and I know that bold decisions are the ones that we think of as courageous, and one might think, oh, you make this decision and you figure it out later. That's actually not how we do it. Not in higher ed. It is part of the things that makes people uncomfortable. Bold decisions are not impulsive, especially when the stakes are this high. They are actually really, really thoughtful, and not impulsive, but well researched. and really takes into consideration stakeholders and draws from the networks that they already have to say, okay, if we were to implement this bold decision, how would we do it? Who would benefit? How could we move the institution's mission and goals forward while we're also trying to meet this bold outcome that we say we want to meet? So it does a couple of things. There are extra brownie bold points if the outcomes are able to uplift the broader public. But if you're able to at least meet the needs of the surrounding community, um, to me, that's a bold decision.
Can you think of a specific time where you took a decision that did feel risky to some extent?
Yeah, so it actually was my first career highlight. So I was pinpointed to direct the New York Area Health Education Center, and we had a grant for this summer enrichment program. The goal was to expose students from the New York City was the catchment area to allied health professions and mentors. But what was risky about it is that we did not have any linkages in place. Nowadays in higher ed, linkages and memorandums between institutions are more common. People are used to them, but back then this was not really something that you heard of. So I had what was in place was the grant, the president's support for the outcome, reaching the outcome, and a deliverable, which was defined by making sure that we enrolled students in the summer program who were interested in serving the underserved and had an interest in healthcare, meaning they were on that track, but that this was going to uplift them. So to set the stage for you, I was working with sort of a little bit of a committee. The hope for the outcome wasn't that great. They thought, well, if you get 5 or 10 students, Nadege, it'll be a success. So I thought to myself, well, this was our opportunity, and I used my knowledge of our catchment area, which was New York City, and I knew that there were some high schools that were focused on exposing students to STEM, who they were like magnet schools. So I said, well, if I make this outreach to the guidance counselors, let's see what we could do. Let's see what could happen. So in a sense, although it was a risky decision, I was working within the limitations of the groundwork of what was already laid out for me. Well, blew it out of the water. We got close to 50 or 60 students. And the president himself, he's an MD who was involved in some of the summer programming, made a few presentations, and he would outwardly say to me, wow, how did you do this? This is incredible. We're going to meet our outcomes. We're going to meet the deliverables, because what that meant is that the grant funders would be willing to refund us because we had said what we were going to do. The other thing that was very important is I was confident in what we were delivering, so that the summer program, I was reaching out and recruiting these students, but I knew that what we were delivering would be of quality, that the faculty who were teaching were very innovative and creative, and that the topics were engaging, were of the moment, would be of interest to these students. But it was a success. But it was my first risky, because there was not much direction. There was just, well, let's see what you can do. We've got to get some students in the room. And we did. We got many students. So that was great.
You had a clear plan, and you sort of were bringing in your prior experience. It sounds like gave you the confidence to at least try it, and
Yes.
the hope that it would succeed. When you've seen bold moves fail, what are the reasons that they do?
So I think there are some very important factors to bold moves either succeeding or failing. So one of the most important to me is leadership support. So when the leader themselves is aligned with the mission or sees it, supports it, um, all things flow from there. Meaning, everyone else in the institution is going to be just as supportive and will create this opportunity for everyone to do well. I think that I think bold decisions also require excellent communication. Everyone has to know what's happening. It has to be very transparent. People have to understand what is the deliverable, what's my role, what do I have to do. So going back to that example of when with the area health education center and I had to reach out to those schools, they were cold calls. They didn't know me, but I had a grant, I had things that I could work with. I went heavy on, well, if your students who meet these requirements, if they participate, this is what they're going to get out of it. This is what the school will get out of it. And this, parents, of course, will support that because little Timmy is in, or Sheila is in a program for the summer, and they're going to walk away with something that they can use in their resume. It will move our institution forward because we would have met the grant deliverables. So I go heavy on the communication, making sure that everyone understands what are the positives, what are the risks, what are we going to do about it if something happens that we didn't bargain on. So excellent communication. Um, Again, bold decisions are not impulsive. So taking time to really put some forethought into how are you going to meet this requirement? Who are the stakeholders? How are you going to work collaboratively with them? um, do they have all the information that they need to move the project forward? The right collaborations can make a program go from 0 to 100 with lots and lots of success. Without the right collaborators, you could be stuck. So you really want to make sure that collaborations are in place. I feel like there is another that could potentially stifle a bold decision, and that is not working from a place of collaborative benefit. When there's only one party who might potentially see a benefit, I think that's problematic. But that can be tied to communication and collaboration. Really making sure that you've taken the time to spell those things out, communicate them, and really make it happen.
Yeah, that's making me think of we had a situation at our law school where the bar exam results were not what leadership had hoped for. And the president reported that despite spending significant dollars on a bar prep course externally, still we weren't having an impact. His bold ask was for even more resource to hire a full-time faculty member dedicated, still keep the outside exam prep, and then the results really started to pop. So I think, yeah, that made me think of both defining the outcomes and getting that leadership support. And he actually got a lot of praise for acknowledging that the first run hadn't worked and discerning another step. And most recently, and I know you do this every day at TuroCom, we've been working on the COMLEX test results for our Kansas College of Osteopathic Medicine. There are all these high stakes exams in professional fields. What are your thoughts? I know that your campus has done a lot to really be top notch in that space. And I imagine there's some bold moves and decisions that were part of creating that environment.
Yes, and some of it predates me, so I'm relaying information. I remember when I first joined the institution, there was discussion about the flipped classroom, which is that the idea you where you provide students with video recordings of their lectures beforehand. And the point being that they will have it in their library, and are not so stuck to, sort of recording everything while they are in lecture, which means that the lecture time is used to review materials, discuss rapid fire questions that prepare them for these exams. So the transition from straight lecture to the flipped classroom was indeed a transition and a very bold move for that time, because I don't know if anyone else had been doing it at that time. Now it's a little bit more popular, or some people have incorporated it. But the faculty, you really had to convince the faculty, what, you mean my 90-minute lecture is no longer, and how are we going to do this? And so bold decisions, when it involves change, it naturally is going to encounter a little bit of adversity, because people really don't like change, and they have to understand really, what are we going to get on the other side of this, if we support it. And then if it doesn't work, what are we going to do? People just like to be in control of what the outcomes might be. And for us, it's been a very successful venture, because students prefer, because then they can utilize that time to review material. They still have to come to class, but there is a little bit less pressure. And I would say, no matter what the bold decision is, you just kind of have to prepare for that level of effort to see it through. Because if you believe in it, and the leadership believes in it, and there is a potential wonderful outcome for either the students, the community, the university as a whole, you kind of have to see it through. Otherwise, doing the same, as you just mentioned, the president who recognized that the Comlex failure wasn't going anywhere, that they needed to do something different, it doesn't feel right to anyone. Everyone complains, we're not, what are we doing? And so you kind of you're stuck in this place where you almost have to do something to address the issue.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't think I had the chance to meet you, but a couple of years ago came with some colleagues to visit your campus and noted that small recording studio. We got a little visit, and also meeting a professional actor that your leadership had hired, which struck me as bold to be able to say to faculty, yes, you're experts, you may be awesome at what you do, and here's someone from outside of higher ed that can help you be more engaging and help what you're teaching stick better in the minds of students.
Yes, and you kind of always have to be shifting with the times. Today's student is not like the same student from 50 years ago. Today's student is decidedly more distracted. They require more, I would say, energy within that learning space. And so you have to take, provide faculty the resources, but you do have to take the traditional lecture and say, well, how do we make this as engaging as it can be, so that we capture the audience and make sure that we're keeping them on track. It is a constant challenge, because you have to move with the times, and the external world is so fast paced. One perfect example is that medicine. I mean, you can't be a social media person when you're in medicine. Why? Because there's so many confidentiality rules around your patient care setting, that you can't really look at it as this space where I'm going to be out in the open. No, there are certain things you can do to be public about, but as a practicing physician, you have to see it from a different lens. So it is a challenge. It's a very fast paced moving world that we are in right now, and we have to find ways to get to a happy medium.
I like the way you paired distraction, which is often presented as as a negative with the need for higher energy in the learning environment. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a great bringing the solution to the issue. Along those lines, we've been talking about institutions. How do you think about preparing students to be willing to be bold?
So one of the things I do with both my team, but also my students. So in my role as dean of students, I meet very often with those groups, particularly student government or student organizations, and they will often bring me an idea. And so I see my role. So I listen. I have tons of questions for them, and then I perceive that my role is to really put the guardrails. So I will give feedback and say, okay, this is a great idea, but I don't think the larger institution will be able to support it. And this is why. But what's even more important is when they do come up with a good idea that I think we can implement, we do. So that they start to build trust in our process, that if I'm guiding them towards a particular solution, that we've thought through all the different limitations, that we can be creative while we're working within our limitations, but we need to operate in the real world. So I view my role as really demonstrating for them how the real world operates, which is you don't have an idea today and you're implementing it tomorrow, right? So I make the connections to, okay, well, how are we going to resource this? Who are we going to need support from? And then, well, the institution can't do this because this is where we are. And through those conversations, you'd be surprised. We get so many great ideas, and they're very creative. I just allow them to brainstorm and share with me what they can. I do believe creating a safe space for that is critical. Where I'm not critical, I just give them constructive feedback and say, this is what we're doing and why. The whys are very important. I take my time to explain things and really give them a bird's eye view of how what it takes to really manage those types of activities.
Well, you may have already answered my last question for you, and you seem like a great mentor. So, if you're thinking about rising leaders in higher ed, what would be one piece of advice that you would give as they think about navigating high stakes decisions, move into new roles of leadership where they may have more decisional authority?
I would say to, if it's just one piece of advice, I would say to take their time with decision making. On the face of it, it seems like being bold should be fast. Not at all. Fast and impulsive. Not at all. I think we're navigating such complicated times that it is okay to sort of press the pause button, really let the dust settle before you jump into making decisions, unless, of course, your president says, we need to figure out this funding right now. If that's not a pressure, really take your time to get to understand the lay of the land, understand your team, understand the players, understand where you can be successful, where you can take calculated risks, but just as importantly, where you can't. And so, my one piece of advice is take your time. You don't have to do it all at once. It can be done in steps, really.
That's great. One of the leaders I admire, Ari Weinswag, talks about great things taking time. I think we've seen both at Touro University and the Community Solution, the creation of many great ventures, and not necessarily overnight. They're not things you build in a day. Well, Dr. Dady, thank you for sharing your expertise and demonstrating how leaders can think boldly to reshape how our institutions serve both students and society.
Thank you so much, Dr. Horowitz and your team, and congratulations again on this podcast. Thank you.
So, to connect with Dr. Nadege Dady and learn more about her work, visit the Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine's website and follow her on LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to Radical Cooperation and follow me on LinkedIn for more insights. Thanks for tuning in to Radical Cooperation. Bold leadership isn't easy, and it's the only way forward. Until next time.